Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Courtney Gedeon, and today our topic is about the impact of social media on mental health. Human beings are social creatures. We need the companionship of others to thrive, and the strength of our connections has a huge impact on mental health and happiness. Being socially connected to others can ease stress, anxiety, and depression, and it can provide comfort and joy, and even add years to your life. In today's world, many of us rely on social platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram to find and connect with each other. Ironically, for a technology that is designed to bring people closer, spending too much time engaging with social media can actually make people feel lonelier and more isolated, and it can intensify mental health problems. Here to share his story of social media and the mental health challenges it can present, it is my pleasure to introduce my first guest, real estate agent, and to many known as James in the City. Welcome, James Malonis. James, so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. What an honor.
Yes, well, I know that we've talked in the past a little bit about social media, and you have quite a presence on social media.
Yes.
And so I guess my first question would be, what platforms do you use specifically, and what do you use them for?
Okay, so I use mostly Instagram and TikTok.
Okay.
I keep Facebook in the background more for kind of like people's birthdays, but also just to run ads for my business.
Okay.
So I sell real estate.
Right.
And I started Instagram about 10-ish years ago when I first started in real estate. And I was one of the first realtors in Toronto and the GTA using Instagram for business.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so those are the two that I use the most.
So it sounds to me like it's a lot of for business, for marketing,
Yes.
and all that kind of stuff.
But then it shifted about
Okay.
5 years into my business, and more like the influencer route kind of came about just because, being young and having a big following and a big brand.
Yes.
I got a lot of the influencer stuff kind of just handed to me by proxy.
Wow, well,
Yeah.
that's really neat.
Yeah.
So a lot of people talk about the benefits, the good, the bad. So in terms of what you use social media for, what would you say are some of the benefits to you?
Yeah, it definitely helps me get business because I am so authentically raw in who I am. And like what you see online is what you get in person.
Right.
Right. So that's what I try to always keep. A lot of good comes from that. I get a lot of brand endorsements. I mean, I'm here today because of social media, right? Sitting with you.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how we didn't meet that way, but we kind of connected more.
We kind of connected through it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we met at an event and then kind of tied two and two together.
Exactly.
But social brings people together, and I love that. But
Yeah.
there's so much bad that comes with it.
And that's kind of what I want to dive into next
Yeah.
a little bit, because we are here talking about the challenges that mental health, the toll it can take. So let's talk a little bit about that for you. Where have you found that it's been hard?
It's hard because people are hurtful,
Yeah.
right? I get a lot of comments made about my physical appearance. So I'm a tall, broader, chested person. So I get a lot of comments about like, you're freakish, you look like a gorilla, which sucks because I have an eating disorder.
Yeah.
But then it also goes deeper than that, where people comment on my actual like physical face,
Wow.
right? So everyone thinks my lips are fake. Doesn't matter if they are or not. They're natural. I was born this way with these big, beautiful, luscious Greek lips.
Yes.
But people make comments like, go to Dr. Dubrow, get on Botched, fix your face. And my hair's been thinning the last couple of years. And they make comments about, I wish you could sell real estate better than your hair's falling out. I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. But you read these comments,
Oh my God.
and it's like, you don't want to post anything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So would you consider that like cyberbullying then, would it be, or?
I guess, I don't know. I mean, it used to really affect me.
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning of the pandemic where I was home every day, not going to events, not being validated by my peers.
Yeah.
I'm home and I'm reading these comments and I'm like, ew.
Yeah.
And then I started to learn, like, where did they come from? Like,
Yeah.
these comments literally mean nothing to me because these people have no impact on my life.
Exactly. So have you found a way to manage all of those negative comments then?
Yeah, it's just I block and delete.
Okay.
Every so often, I have like a little clapback moment, but it's mostly block and delete.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to see it.
So let's talk a little bit about mindless scrolling.
Yeah.
Is this something you do? Because it's something I do.
I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
So I'll do it like when I was in the parking lot here, when I got here today.
Yeah.
I browse TikTok for 5 minutes, just to kind of like set my mind into like a bit of like a happier place.
Yeah.
But I don't do that aimless scrolling on Instagram.
Okay.
Right? I only look at the stories or the feeds that I want to see.
Right.
So like when you were traveling, I wanted to see what you were doing.
Yeah.
Right? I wanted to catch up on your trip.
Right.
Right? Or friends of mine, what are they doing? But I mute a lot of accounts that I don't want to see.
Okay.
Right? Because I just don't want that negativity or whatever they're doing to affect my day and trying to bring down my personal happiness.
Yes. Do you find that, the constant dings, the constant notifications, all that sort of stuff, has that affected you at all?
I actually turn them off.
Okay.
I don't get notified about Instagram or TikTok notifications. I give myself an hour in the evening
Yes.
to go through them and respond to my comments. And that's pretty much it.
Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of your overall mental health,
Yeah.
like managing your overall mental health, because, with this social media presence and being so busy and everything that's going on, are there things that you do that you find have really worked and helped you for your mental health?
Absolutely. So getting in the gym every single day really
Okay.
helps my mindset.
Yes.
Box breathing has been a huge thing for me. In for 4, hold, out for 7.
Oh, okay.
That's been really great for me.
Okay.
I can't meditate. My brain wanders way too much. I'm
Yes.
an Aquarius. My brain's always wandering.
Yes.
But honestly, like calling my mother, it sounds so cliche, but just hearing her voice for like literally 30 seconds, I'm like, Mommy,
Yeah.
talk me through this. And she's like, you're fine. Like, go grab a coffee. You're good to go.
Right.
And just hearing that voice, that validation
Yes.
is all I needed.
So it sounds also like it's a support group. Like there's people who act as supportive people in your life.
Yes.
Which is so important.
Absolutely.
But there's also people on social media who are envious of other people's lives.
Yeah.
They get influenced from what they see. It arouses whatever emotions it brings up in them. Have you ever been like the target of somebody who's been envious of you? Or, since we're being so open today, have you ever felt watching somebody else's stuff envious of what they're showing on social media?
Yeah, yes to both.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of comments or people calling me like, how can I be the next James in the city? And I respond like, you can't.
Yeah.
Because I am just the only one. Like you are just the only Courtney.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't be a mock of someone else.
Right.
Right. So that's not being authentic. So I get a lot of envious comments of people saying, how'd you build your brand?
Yeah.
Like, I can't answer those questions. It just came naturally to me.
Right.
But have I been envious? Yeah. I mean, the market has shifted drastically right now. And it's hard. I've been in the business 10 years. I'm at the top of my game. I run a very successful real estate business.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing a lot of these new agents come in absolutely crushing it. And I'm like, that wasn't me my first year. How are they doing it?
Yes.
But also it was a different market 10 years ago. I was 21,
Wow.
right? Who's going to trust a 21-year-old with their, Richmond Hill estate home? No
Right.
one.
Well,
Right.
you've put in the time now
Exactly.
and all that kind of stuff.
So it creeps in the back of your mind every so often,
Yeah.
but just like, look what you've built,
yes.
right? And how can I help others do the same without making them someone else?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's amazing. We are going to be bringing you back because there's more I want to talk
Yes.
to you about. I really appreciate you coming on and being so open and honest.
Of course.
Because not a lot of people want to admit that, social media has played a part on their mental health.
Most definitely.
So thank you so much. We will be back with more Mental Health Matters when we return. Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Courtney Gedeon, and today we are discussing social media and the impact on mental health. It is my pleasure to introduce my next guest, registered psychotherapist and clinical co-director at the Newmarket Psychotherapy Clinic, Medea Javed Yazdi. Medea, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Courtney.
So we heard a little bit about James's story and what he's gone through on social media. Any initial thoughts on that off the top?
Yeah, I would say that listening to James, his story is one that I hear in my practice pretty frequently.
Yes.
We all have access to our phones and to these social media platforms. It's something that's part of our culture now.
Exactly.
And so it's not uncommon, and if I can normalize any of that for your viewers, would be that, yeah, it is frequently does come up as a concern about the risks, the benefits, the pros and the cons of social media on our mental health.
And is this something that you're seeing more often in your clinic? Is people talking about social media and how it affects their mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to like numbers
Yeah.
and engage that specifically, but I would say I have worked with a number of clients where it may not be something that they come in directly for right away,
Okay.
but it certainly comes up in our conversations and how it's affecting them.
It's part of what's, one of the things that is playing a role.
Yes. So if I hear things that, my relationships are being affected, or how they view themselves and their sense of self, if I hear themes of, negative thoughts such as I'm not good enough or beliefs like that, and then we dig a little deeper, there have been times that I've heard clients talk about how that ends up being connected to them looking externally at their social media platforms, comparing themselves, and ending up in sort of what we call cognitive distortions or unhelpful thinking patterns, where it's like, I should be doing this.
Yes.
And that comparison game, right? And we heard a little bit about what it feels like to have those feelings of inadequacy or envy, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So with your clients that you see, do you ever feel that there are any benefits? Like, has social media ever been a benefit to one of your clients where they've had a chance to connect with somebody else? Or have you ever heard that story?
I don't know if I would connect it exactly that way. I think when we do the work and we start to get better about perhaps the hygiene around social media, much like we have our good sleep hygiene and our boundaries around those types of things, if we start to implement boundaries, then they, I think, start to reap the benefits a bit more, right?
Yes.
So if the benefits are things like, you know, I want to gain more social awareness around issues, or I want to feel more connected to friends and family or other people that I don't have access to.
Yes.
Those are good benefits of social media. It's not all or nothing, right?
Yes.
But you can only reap those benefits if we start to really look at what are my boundaries around this. So you talked about mindless scrolling before. If we're doing that for like majority of our day, seven hours a day,
Yeah.
then we're not going to reap those benefits.
Exactly, yeah. No, it's funny because I try to take stock a little bit now. I'm trying to be a bit more mindful about it.
Yes.
And get a sense of how I feel when I'm doing it and how I feel afterwards.
Yes.
And I've often thought to myself, I don't feel any better after doing this, right? So
Yeah.
it's an activity that you really have to stay on top of.
Absolutely, and that might be an indication. So if you're noticing those lower feelings, and if it's sadness, or you're noticing that, you know, there's a discomfort, then that's a bit of a sign and a signal. How did you feel before you got on? How are you feeling while you're on? How are you feeling after? And that can be a really good, you know, sort of little red flag for you to be like, oh, okay, this isn't feeling so good, so maybe I need to implement more limits.
Yes.
And maybe put better boundaries around those things, which is why I talk so much about boundaries.
Yes, exactly. So let's talk about kids for a minute.
Sure.
Because the age of children having these devices is getting younger and younger.
Yes.
And we almost feel like bad parents because we refuse our kids to have social media. You know, we held off on the phones for a long time.
Yes.
But are we bad parents because we're not giving our kids, you know, this access?
No, and I think what you're bringing up there is a healthy level of concern, right? You're being, like you said, mindful before. So really being mindful and having these questions speaks to you're engaged in your parenting.
Yeah.
and concerned. And I think that's a healthy concern. I try to avoid, you know, black and white, all or nothing sort of scenarios. So we have to look at the gray, and the way to support our children around these things, because you're right, it's here, it's not really going anywhere. I would say that we need to model what our expectations are. So
Okay.
we're on these devices and
Yep.
on these platforms too, and we need to also keep in mind the age of our children and that this is an evolving conversation. So, you know, what you might be informing them about when they see you holding your phone at age 5 might be different than what you talk to them about when they turn 15.
Right.
And that to have that open conversation allows them to feel safe and secure to come to you with their questions about it. And, you know, you're allowed to empathize with their disappointment when you put a limit in, and then that with repetition is probably going to get them to buy in around those boundaries, which are healthy, which
Yeah.
children do actually rely on, even if outwardly they're expressing their disappointment to you.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yes.
And then my other question kind of with that is, once you do allow your child to have that social media, what do you feel is the right thing when it comes to trust about having access to their phone or going through their accounts and all of that? I mean, has that been something that's come forward to you in your clinic at all with any of your clients?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I work predominantly with adults, so those parenting questions do come up.
Yeah.
I think, again, it's a bit case by case.
Right.
Every parent and every child and situation is a little bit different. So I don't think that there's if you know that the limits that you're putting in are keeping your child safe and secure, and that you're willing to have an open conversation with them and hear them out too, I think that's the key, right? Because then they know, oh, there's room for this to grow, and it's not just a no without an explanation. Children are curious, and we have to follow what their questions are as well and listen to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about friends on social media, because there's people who have, when it was Facebook, there was, hundreds or thousands of friends. And as we know, friends are important for mental health. But sometimes people who have all of these friends on social media can still feel lonely. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's true, right? Social media and only engaging and trying to connect with people via those channels solely can correlate to some loneliness for sure. I think this is where we got to do things in moderation and balance, and it really scratches the surface when you think about what kinds of conversations and engagement am I having with those hundreds or thousands of friends, right? Sometimes we see that it's as simple as like a little emoticon that we send to someone, or a like, or a quick comment, but are we digging deeper? And we see a lot of each other's highlight reels, as everyone knows, right? So we don't really dig as deep, and sometimes we need to kind of slow that down and get that face-to-face connection with one another, and dig deeper with one another. And I think that helps to mitigate some of those feelings of loneliness, or that I'm the only one feeling this way.
So is there such thing as social media addiction, and how does somebody know if they've crossed that line?
I think when you're experiencing symptoms of, I guess, poor coping mechanisms, or addictions where we're trying to cope with difficult things, but we're struggling to use healthy coping, it's really looking at, how is this impacting my day-to-day functioning? And so from there, if you're noticing that it's really interrupting and interfering with your relationships, with your work, with your social life, all of these different factors, then it might be time to seek some support and get some therapy, and figure out ways that we can help you with that.
So much amazing information. Thank you so much. This is a very important topic. We're going to be bringing you back more Mental Health Matters when we return. Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Courtney Gedeon, and today we are talking about social media and the impact on mental health. I am joined by my two fabulous guests, registered psychotherapist and clinical co-director at the Newmarket Psychotherapy, Medea Javid Yazdi, and realtor and James in the City, James Malonis. Thank you guys so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
So this is an important topic. We all, most of us anyway, have social media to some level. James, again, thank you for being so open to come and talk about your experiences there in mental health. Medea, anything that stood out to you when James was talking about his challenges and journey?
Yeah, what really stood out to me was all the great things that James has started to implement. You talked a lot about putting certain boundaries and limits when you check your social media, muting certain things on your social media that you don't want to see, that have affected. So you've really tuned in and looked inward as to what's working for me and what's not, and really taken action steps to curate your social media to what fits for you, so that you are reaping those benefits that you and I were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all, and you were mentioning about boundaries and all of that stuff, how important it is.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that, we were talking about children, and, simple things like, okay, this portion of the evening we're going to put our phones at a charging station.
Yes.
And so it's not following us with us room to room,
Yes.
table to table. And that gives us a break. So it's in line with some of the things that James introduced us to in terms of what he's been doing.
Not even for children though, even for adults. Like I'll host a dinner party and I'll say to people, leave your phones in a basket at my front door.
Yes.
No phones tonight.
Yeah.
I want you to enjoy my company versus putting it on Instagram.
Yeah, there's nothing
Yes.
that drives me nuts more than the phones at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's just talk about therapy for a moment because I try to normalize it as much as I can. So James, through your journey, has therapy been part of it?
To some extent, yes, but in a variety of ways. So from my eating disorder to some other childhood issues that I went through, and then a little bit into addiction.
Okay.
But I found more therapy for myself, helping others,
Okay.
than getting help for myself.
Okay.
Because I would heal by helping others get through what I've been through.
And you know what's interesting about that is when you were talking to me about when people would reach out and say, how can I be the next James in the city?
Yeah.
But it actually sounds to me like you're coming from a mentorship side of like it sounds like that would be something that could be
Yeah. I mentor a
beneficial.
lot of new realtors, but even with, I've gone through like violence and addiction. So I will go to shelters and I will go to clinics and I will speak to people living there or seeking treatment just to share my story. Because you can, you look at someone who's close to your age and what they've been through and how they can overcome it.
Yeah.
Right? And it does get better. It's like that whole saying of it does get better.
Yeah, and I think you're speaking to normalizing what it is like to seek support and seek help,
Yeah.
and sort of stripping away some of that stigma.
Exactly.
And again, we're talking about social media creating some of this isolation, and it's only me kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so doing these types of things is really helpful for other people to see that they too can seek support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, in terms of therapy, if somebody were to come to you, and I'm just speaking to the people at home in case they're going through this,
Yeah.
if they were to come to therapy for a social media addiction or it's really impacting their life, what could they expect?
Well, again, I'm not specialized in addictions per se, but certainly some of the things that I touched on earlier, therapy is a lot about, exploring our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Right.
And so on a broad level, regardless of what modality a therapist is using, at the core, it's really trying to figure out what's going on for you specifically, because it's going to look different for person to person, right? And there could be other things at play where social media is coming in. It might be the focal point, or it might be something that's in the background versus the foreground. So we have to do some investigating and exploration first to figure out, so that we can then figure out what are the tools and things that will support you in your healing.
Right. Well, I've seen a lot of things, ironically, in social media about other people taking a complete break from it. Is that something that you would ever consider doing, James, or have you done that before?
I had to do it in the past, mostly for a lot of the hate comments that I would get. I took a bit of a break from social media. I couldn't look at it.
Yeah.
But it's not a big thing for me.
Yeah.
When I travel, I try not to be on social media. Like I like to post about my day,
Yeah.
and let my followers know what I'm doing. But I try not to be aimlessly scrolling. So that's kind of like my social media break,
Yes.
versus like completely logging out for 3 weeks. That I can't do because I need it for my business.
Right, exactly.
Sure, and I've had clients who have gone the other way and have taken some time and completely stripped it from their certain platforms from their phone or deleted the apps.
Yeah.
And then when they're in a healthier place, then they can reintroduce it, because now they have, like we talked about, those limits and boundaries, so they know how to manage it better. And so
Yes.
then they might be able to reintroduce it, or they may just find that they don't really want to introduce it all that much, and that's okay too.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting when you take that break from it. You kind of, I don't know, recalibrate or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, Medea, if somebody wanted to reach out and get some help, how could they do that?
Well, I work at Newmarket's psychotherapy team, a clinic in Newmarket, so they can certainly reach us by getting on our website at newmarketpsychotherapy.com and connect with us that way.
Amazing. And I also love how many therapists work for the clinic.
Yes. So we're a team of registered social workers and registered psychotherapists like myself. And so our intake coordinator will do a screening with you and be able to match you up with a clinician.
Amazing. Thank you. And it's at The James in the
James in the
City.
City, yes.
Amazing. Thank you guys both so much.
Thank you.
I'm your
Thank you.
host, Courtney Gedeon. Take care. All right. Thank you.